We have with us an expert on the subject, Judith A. Weisman, Ph.D., with her great new book, Sexual Sabotage, from WND Books, How One Mad Scientist Unleashed a Plague of Corruption and Contagion on America. Dr. Weisman, welcome back. It is a genuine pleasure. Welcome to the Savage Nation.
Dr. Savage, it is always a delight to talk with you, even about such tragic things.
Yeah, well, now you were on years ago with your first book, and I'll never forget the conversation that we had, how great it was. And the new book basically tells us more about how fraudulent Kinsey's data was. What does it disclose that is new?
Well, there's a lot of new information in it, but I'll tell you, it's an amazing thing, Michael, when you're drummed out of the academic profession. Normally, you have about 20, 30 grad students, and they're working on all the aspects of a discovery that you've made. And when it's just one person, essentially, it keeps plowing through. It's amazing to discover what I had. And frankly,
no, wait, you were drummed out of academia because you say that the fraudulent research of Alfred Kinsey encouraged and justified sexual abuse of children, including that by pedophile priests. So you were thrown out of academia because of that?
Well, yeah, between that and my work for the Department of Justice on images of children, crime, and violence in Playboy, Penthouse, and Hustler, I mean, there's no opening at all out there. Yeah. No,
of course not. The universities are today, sadly so, not quite what they were even 30 years ago. So the World War II generation comes home. It was trained to honor God, country, and family, right? And to come home and get married, live with one woman faithfully, and have children. Then along comes Kinsey and his cohorts, and he reports that nearly all American men were actually sex offenders. Is that one of the things he claimed?
Oh, absolutely. He said 95%. 95%. And pointed out that would really be your fathers that he's talking about. These are the guys that were out there throughout World War II fighting and dying to preserve the freedom for the world, not just for
and he slanders them and says that 90% of them were degenerates. And then he claimed that no women or children were harmed by rape or incest. Is that correct? Because he said all sex is good?
He interviewed 4,441. I mean, talk about crummy methodology. And where was everybody's brains when they're reading this? He interviewed 4,441 women, and not one single person, not one single female, was ever really seriously harmed by a rape.
Is that what he said?
Yeah. Now, look, I'm the first person to tell you we had a much lower rate of rape and sexual abuse and all sorts of dysfunctions pre-Kinsey. But, come on, if you've interviewed 4,441...
Right, well, let's talk about that. The sexual liberation, so-called, of the 60s has actually led to a vast uptick of rape and such, has it not?
Thousands of percentage points, absolutely.
So, in other words, all the porno that's available in every household now because of the breakdown of morality in this country and the government looking the other way, because of your term, the sex industrial complex, there's now porno in every hotel room. It's in every household. It is actually not liberating mankind. It is enslaving them. Is that basically what you're saying, Doctor?
It is. And the fundamental thing that all pornography does is to render the guy impotent. I mean, nobody consumes pornography and doesn't and remains potent. Potent, you look at the definition, it's having your own power. Well, if you're a guy who can no longer make love to someone who is absolutely your beloved, your sweetheart, if you can't do that anymore without imagining a picture of somebody else or even of her, then you are effectively you are impotent. And that happens almost immediately when the images begin to override the relationship that a human being has with another. Yeah, they're impotent. Once that happens, then everything's up for grabs.
So Alfred Kinsey, you say, was the most effective and deviant sexual philosopher in human history. Much of what we hear about sex today is based upon the lies that he told. And he was the first acclaimed American so-called scientist who insisted on poly. He said that virginity is unhealthy. He said promiscuity helps marriages. He said pornography is constructive. He said obsessive masturbation and bestiality are never problematic. He said bi and homosexual sex acts are normal. And he said children are sexual from birth. He then went on and said children are also appropriate sex partners for adults. He did this for 60 years, and yet no one challenged him?
Oh, no one in the field. No academicians. Well, when he first came out, Abraham Maslow and several other people criticized his methodology. Nobody ever spoke about, hey, how did he get that information about men saying that little babies of 2 months of age can have orgasms? Although he said that 2-month-old didn't. He said that the 5-month-old did. But they tested these children around the clock. Nobody ever questioned it. But Michael, we were a different people then. We wouldn't have, nobody could think that a scientist could actually have men raping children for his data, even though right across the water, we had the German Nazis carrying out the kinds of experiments they did. The thing that
So you say there's a relationship between the porno industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and the sexology industry. You say that they're all interlocked.
Daily. It grows daily. Look, we never could have had legitimized pornography except that we had sex experts, and most of those were Kinsey's co-authors in the beginning, who went into the courtroom and who said, no, these things don't harm anybody. This is not obscene. This should be legal. All right. So we had major changes in our laws based on Kinsey and his people. Well, okay. So we've got the pornographers who are looking to the sexologists. There was no sexologist until Kinsey, remember, no human sexuality education. But
in a nutshell, are you okay? You're a moralist and you're on a campaign. Do you actually think that the porn industry can be stopped when there's so many billions of dollars at stake?
Pardon?
Can the porn industry really be stopped when so many billions are at stake?
I think so. Look, this country can do all sorts of things. First of all, whoever thought we would become a country in the first place? I know we were different, but still, the biggest problem we've had is keeping this from the public. If we can finally resurrect a investigation at the congressional level of Kinsey, or a grand jury investigation, and the public begins to learn what was done to them without their consent, and you're looking at lawsuits like crazy that become possible. It's just like the big tobacco issue. Once the money starts being made by people who go into the courtroom and sue for what was done to them based on these frauds, look, Planned Parenthood, SICAs, they've been going into schools all over the country preaching of the most unbelievably fraudulent methodologies, and most of that you can always point to the background of that as being a Kinsey-based fraud. So,
but you're saying the Kinsey Institute was a benefactor of the Rockefeller Foundation?
The Rockefellers funded the Kinsey Institute, absolutely.
Oh my boy. God! So big liberalism, in essence, has its hand in the moral meltdown of America. Is that your implication? And why would they do that?
Without any question, the leftist movement has been a complete controlling element in bringing down the morality of the United States. And by the way, it's the same sort of thing that had been going on in Europe for years and years and years, and even worse than what our repressed Americans have allowed to happen. I mean, years ago.
But you argue in a way something I said last week. I saw this in your press release. I was quite surprised because I had said the same thing on my own last week, which was only by going back to the so-called repression of the 50s can this country hope to heal itself and become a great nation again.
Absolutely. It's the only way we'll survive. And
So you're absolutely swimming against the tide, where the tide is, if it feels good, do it, let it all hang out, don't be repressed, don't be uptight, don't be Victorian. Your argument is to the contrary, correct?
Yes, correct. Absolutely correct.
So how do you convince young people who are so free with sexuality today? You know, and I know, especially amongst the youth of today, the girls give it up for virtually nothing. It's nothing. It's like a yawn to them. How do you convince that generation that sexuality is to be controlled?
Well, I think that's why I keep saying that one of the things we need to really do is to get a congressional investigation, or we need to get a grand jury investigation, so that people are allowed to know how they were lied to and how come they now are suffering with AIDS, or why do they have gonorrhea, why do they have syphilis, why have they have their lives collapsed and in so many ways.
In a nutshell, you're saying it's all because they were brainwashed into believing that more sex is good and sex with as many partners is good, when in fact that is why they wound up with these diseases?
Complete brainwashing. The complete brainwashing.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I think the pornography industry in particular needs to be investigated and curtailed. I think its penetration of every American household has led to a weakness in this country unlike anything ever seen. The book is Sexual Sabotage by Dr. Judith A. Weisman from WND Books. Dr. Weisman, it's been a pleasure. I wish you well with your book. Thank you for being with us.